the president has some very strong opinions about vaccines. It's not just Bobby Kennedy. The president also has some strong opinions about Operation Warp Speed, and I think people misconstrue that. Operation Warp Speed, to my thinking, was an example of an amazing success and capability to mount an all-of-government response into what was appeared to be a crisis. I think bona fide, the president believed it was a crisis, and he was able to get the government to respond in a whole-of-government response in which you had agencies that normally don't play nice in the sandbox with each other cooperating. He broke down the silos. And you're seeing him do the same thing now in a number of other sectors. He clearly has the ability to get the government to get moving when he wants to.
All right, guys, happy Friday. We're going to jump right into this. Dr. Robert Malone is here. This is the guy who developed the mRNA vaccine. This is the king of Maha. He knows exactly what he's talking about. We're going to jump right in with him. Next week, by the way, Eric Trump will be here. He's going to talk about everything that his family has endured. It is unbelievable. I've got a brand new column out today, SeanSpicer.com, so make sure you go read that. And by the way, just telling you this, I always say hit the subscribe and notification button. We drop a rant every weekend. I'm just going to tease you by saying this. Kamala Harris tomorrow. You're not going to want to miss this video and a special appearance on top of her. Hit the subscription and notification button. What comes out this weekend, you're going to love. Trust me when I tell you that. It's something special. I've been working on this for weeks and it came to fruition. Just trust me. Sign up, hit the subscription, and you're going to want to watch this and be sitting down. It's good stuff. By the way, I mentioned the other day, it's hard to find these videos. That's why you have to hit the subscription and notification button because you have to search the Sean Spicer Show. No kidding. Carol puts it in the Sean, you are right about finding your episodes. I find it easy to find two-way, but even though I have my notifications, I still have to search for you. And then it's like, me too, me too, me too. So guys, send people the link to the show and say, click on it because it's the only way you can find Sean. And by the way, some great comments on my newsletter on Substack, SeanSpicer.com. Bill writes, you have a really great guest. Even my wife, who's British, understands the great work. And Paul says, on top of the truth. Thank you guys for subscribing to it all. Before I bring in Dr. Robert Malone, I got to tell you guys, you saw this accident happen this weekend in New York, 2 Delta planes hitting each other. Massive problems with air traffic control in terms of delays, cancellations, safety. I'm just not going to go any further. President Trump has a ton of money in the big, beautiful bill to help modernize our decades-long, outdated air traffic control, ATC system. And there's good news because there's a company named Peraton. Peraton has been working in the national security and defense space, innovating. They've got the right people, the right technology. They're working with NASA, the national security agencies, the Department of Defense. These guys have what it takes to modernize our air traffic control to make sure it's safe, it's on time. This is amazing. This will be an amazing upgrade. So if you want to see the kind of company that I'm talking about, go to Peraton, Peraton.com/ATC. There's no buy. All I'm telling you to do is check out this amazing company. They're not trying to sell you on anything. They just want you to know that we have these kind of companies, technology, people, and innovation at our fingertips. Go to Peraton.com/ATC. The future of air travel is here. By the way, we head into the weekend. I got to tell you, there's a thing called weight cycling. I'm very familiar with this. You lose a few pounds, you gain a few pounds, you lose a few pounds, you gain a few pounds. It's literally called weight cycling. Half of Americans do this. And to be honest with you, it's not healthy. I know we try to take it off, but then when you put it on and take it off, you increase your risk of diabetes, liver damage, heart attack, stroke, whatever. The bottom line is, this puts a tremendous strain on your organs. And so there's a great new product called Lean. Here's what it looks like. It is not a shot. It's a pill advanced by doctors it's just an oral supplement. You take it. It's not an injectable. The science is unbelievably impressive. It's studied ingredients target weight loss in 3 ways. It helps maintain a healthy blood sugar. It helps control appetite and cravings, and it helps convert fat into energy. This is exactly what you need. If you want to lose fat in a meaningful way, lose fat and weight, go to takelean.com. Use code Sean for a discount. Takelean.com. Use takelean.com. Use code Sean for a discount. Without further ado, Dr. Robert Malone. Doctor, good to have you back on the show. It's been a little while.
Thanks. It's great to see you, Sean, and I really enjoyed seeing you the other day at the Maha event.
Yeah, it was good to see you in person. It's amazing. I was talking to the team. You were one of the first guests that we had on the show in person in the studio, and it was amazing then. And so much has changed for the better since that first encounter we had on the show.
Well, I'm glad you see it that way. I kind of see it as a project in evolution. It's every single day brings another abbreviated news cycle and more change. Hopefully, it's for the better. But we have things like Charlie Kirk's assassination that aren't for the better.
No, definitely not. But I mean, in terms of the Maha and healthcare, I want to start with something you mentioned every day. Someone flagged me. They knew you were on, and they said, "Hey, with all the stuff that we should be proud of that's going on in the movement right now, on Tuesday, the FDA rolled out a new abortion drug, and groups like Susan B. Anthony and others are calling on Marty Makary to reverse this decision." I'll read you what it says. On Tuesday, the U.S. Food and Drug Administration quietly approved a new generic version of the abortion drug, mifepristone. The drug is produced by Avita Solutions, a company that describes its mission as being to normalize abortion and make it accessible to all. The big issue, I think, for a lot of folks is the FDA allowing this to be made mail order.
Yeah. That would be a big issue for sure. If you're asking my opinion about this, I am not okay with abortion. I am in favor of the rights of the fetus as an individual. And in terms of FDA's positioning, I have a sense that this is still a organization within the U.S. government in transition, and there's still there are different factions there. And I hope Marty wasn't aware that this was coming down, that it slipped through the cracks, but he might have been. The CDC is another one where it is very much a ongoing tension, let's say. I'm trying to choose my words here, not to sound like I'm promoting violence or something, but the CDC is in conflict. And I think the FDA is too, and I know that the NIH is also. These various HHS branches are in transition, and it's going to go on beyond just President Trump's term. This is going to be a long-term effort.
When I talk to people in the industry, or in the industry and in government, one of the themes that flows throughout, and this is, I'm wondering if this is what you're getting at, is they'll say to me, there's not a lot of politicos there. Like whether it's FDA, CDC, NIH, they'll be like, yeah, we got a guy at the top and that's it. And then so the careers are still running these places, still pushing an agenda, and you've got one or two at most political appointees at the top of these agencies, but they're really still being run by the career folks. Is that fair? Is that what you're talking about?
So that's not what I'm seeing at the CDC. We were fortunate in having. Let me take a step back, Sean. It surprised and amazed me to learn that the CDC has been run in absentia by its directors now for over a decade. That we haven't had a politically appointed CDC director on site in Atlanta for years and years and years. And the place has come to kind of run itself. Then we had the recent events with Susan Menarez that have been featured with the hearings, et cetera. And the sudden resignation of those three individuals from the CDC after she was asked to leave. They were functionally running the CDC, those three. And now in their absence, there's a cohort of people at the CDC that are feeling like they've finally been relieved from this kind of oppression, wokeism at the top that they had to conform with. And there's others that are still very much aligned with that culture. And they are in conflict. The CDC is not monomorphic. as an agency. And I know that that's the case also at NIH. There are long-term people at the NIH that are fully supporting the changes that are occurring, and there's other ones that are highly resistant to it. So that's, kind of to be expected. It's, you might imagine that these federal agencies are all staffed by folks that are from the left, but that's not the case. It's just that they've been harassed and bullied and suppressed, those that are not aligned with the kind of woke left agenda. And now that's being released, but there's a lot of conflict in efforts to realign and to define new structures politically and organizationally. So I don't see it as this monomorphic leftist bureaucracy. What I'm observing at CDC is a fair amount of churn and a refreshing amount of openness to change, but active resistance by those that are entrenched, as you point out. And just to put a cap on it, this gets back to the senior executive service. Sean, you know all about that. And a lot of people don't. They're not even aware. They're shocked when they heard that the senior executive service has its own flag. These are the folks that are the professional bureaucracy that really run the government. And there are good ones and bad ones within that, but they are the ones that have been running a lot of these agencies. And in the case of the FDA, there's still a strong backbone of people that are still motivated by whatever it is that they're motivated. It seems that they're motivated by trying to protect their opportunities to take a nice exit and join the pharmaceutical industry when they're done. So that's I don't see it as a block. I see it as a refreshing new opportunity for change with turmoil, as you'd expect.
I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. You just said that the CDC that's based in Atlanta hasn't had a director on site in quite some time.
Yeah.
Can I get that gig? How does that work? So the person who's the head of the CDC doesn't work at the CDC?
Yeah, that's apparently the last couple of directors that's been the case. Is
Where do they work?
From home, I guess. And of course, that all became normalized during COVID. Rochelle Walensky, my understanding, barely made an appearance. She kind of phoned it in.
But everyone else goes into the office.
Well, we can discuss that. You know that during COVID, a lot of the federal workforce was also working from home. And then in the case of the CDC, there was this unfortunate shooting by a person that was unhinged, that shot up the outside of the building and unfortunately killed a Fulton County, as I recall, police officer that responded. And so then they got a couple of days leave, and then they were allowed to work from home until the 15th of last month. And now, of course, they're mostly on furlough once again.
All right, I want to go back. Let's see. We got a lot of ground that I want to cover. The first thing I want to do is talk about food. I keep feeling like I learn more and more, probably almost every week, about stuff that's in our food. Big food, like what I thought was healthy, what was not. You put out a tweet that was really interesting because you talked about a farm that you have some relationship with or that you've observed, and you can describe this. His name is Joel Salatin.
Yeah, Polyface.
Say that again?
Polyface Farms here in Virginia.
Okay, so all these animals thrive without antibiotics, chlorine baths, vaccine. First of all, I didn't know that animals had chlorine baths. That's news to me. So what is it? Why isn't that getting more prominence? And what is the reality? Like, again, when I'm reading this and you're saying these guys are thriving without chlorine baths, I'm like, I didn't realize that the food that I was eating was subject to a chlorine bath.
So, Sean, you live in the bubble of DC. Forgive me for saying that.
No, it's fair. It's fair.
And so you haven't had an opportunity to experience what factory farming has become in the United States. and mass production of animals for food, and the associated very, very large slaughterhouses. Now we're down to, as I understand it, there's basically 4 companies that run all the slaughterhouses in the United States. And this is one of Joel's pet peeves. Joel is a true hero. He has been writing about regenerative farming for decades. He is an amazingly intellectual farmer, self-taught. He's been farming. It's now well over 1,000 acres in Virginia, giving back to his parents that escaped from Venezuela years and years and years ago. And he was being actively mentioned as one of the appointments to the USDA before there was the turnaround and the current director was appointed. So Joel Salatin is truly a worldwide recognized expert in regenerative farming. So it's not just about these more benign animal husbandry practices that in many ways are more akin to the way our forefathers raised livestock, but it's also the practices of regenerating the soil rather than depleting the soil through intensive agriculture and then supplementing it with petroleum-based fertilizers. So what you're kind of encountering in that comment is that you aren't aware of how, I'll just say it, how bad the large agribusiness has become in its practices. This is what also leads us to having glyphosate or Roundup and atrazine in virtually all of our soybean and grain products. Is the financial incentives associated with large ag. And we can go down that rabbit hole if you want. It has to do with harvesters and the cost of equipment and timing and things like that. But it's the way American agriculture has developed under the influence of basically Wall Street investors. And it's very different from what's happened in Europe, where there is a strong commitment to food integrity and safetiness and avoidance of a lot of these chemical additives and desiccating agents, et cetera.
So is Joel's farm a one-off, or are we going to see more people get into this? Like, I've become much more conscious of it in terms of, in this case, meat. Like, I have a farm that I buy meat from that's completely processed without this, in Virginia, by the way. We can swap names later.
Good for you.
But is this now just a one-off where you find this farm and this farm is going to do well, or are more people going to get into this because it's a growing industry, you think?
So the president has actually invested in the big beautiful bill quite a bit. I don't remember what the number is. It's not in the trillions. I'm not even sure if it's in the billions. It may be hundreds of millions, but he's invested in regenerative farming, which is what we're talking about. And this goes back to John F. Kennedy, back when I was still in diapers, had a real strong commitment to small farming and to supporting the local farm. So the president is investing in this in the budget, as is Congress. There's no question that there's a major consumer movement, and you are embodying that, seeking out Virginia grass-fed beef. That's what we have on our farm. My physician actually manages an Angus herd. He's a 6th-generation Angus farmer in Virginia, as well as being a family physician. And we buy a quarter cow from him as needed and keep the freezer stocked. Is it going to be sustainable? What's happening is that more and more people, not just in the flyover states, but out in the more rural parts of even the East Coast corridor, are seeking opportunities to return back to the land in many ways. There is a movement among both older and younger people to do this. And they are hungry for information about how they can do it, how they can get started. In our little Substack that we put out pretty much daily, our homesteading pieces are among the more popular. We talk about politics and health and COVID and all the other stuff. People love the homesteading part. And what they're hungry for is information about how they can get involved, how they can control their own food supply, how they can be empowered to do this. And we always say it starts with chickens. You can just have a few backyard chickens and start to learn the things, and also with raised garden beds. So we try to provide practical guidance to folks and examples to basically convey, you can do this too. We can do this, you can do this. And there, as you point out, this is a big component of the Make America Healthy Again movement. It's something like the 70s in a way, but updated. And that reflects what's really going on with MAHA. There are self-professed crunchy moms that are part of this movement, and there are hip urbanites. It cuts across all the full political spectrum. Who doesn't want to be healthier and to have a healthier future for their children, instead of, as the president pointed out, our children having shorter, less healthy lives than their parents? That's a pretty compelling argument.
So beyond raising your own chickens and buying meat the way I do, one of the things that has blown my mind, though, is that if you have assumed for the last few years that you are eating healthy, you look for that symbol that says heart healthy on the products that you that's the laugh I was looking for. But like, I've trusted that, right? I felt like, oh my gosh, I'm buying something and it says heart healthy, FDA approved or certified, organic, whatever. And yet I feel like the more I read, the more I learn that, is that a big food issue? Is that a government issue? Why have we gotten to this point where now all of these foods that we assumed were healthy are not? Is that because the government is allowing it to happen, or is that because the big food is lobbying it? Like, why has that happened?
So I think you nailed it indirectly. It's a complex multifactorial problem. The heart healthy and that kind of marketing label, because that's what it is. We need to acknowledge and recognize that we're being sold on a product or a group of products with that kind of labeling. And the USDA has absolutely been influenced by large ag and continues to be so.
When you say large ag, what do you mean? What is large ag, sir?
So what's happened, and it goes back to the 60s under Nixon, there was a decision that we were going to transform the nature of U.S. agriculture. This happened under Earl Butz. And the logic was that, this kind of comes from the same, let's give them the benefit of the doubt, kind of open-hearted progressive liberalism, that we, the United States, have the resources and capabilities to feed the world, and so we should. And in order to do so, what was developed was the logic that the small farmer had to get big or get out. That was the language that was used. The consequence was that these smaller family farms that were distributed and highly productive across the United States consolidated under the influence of large investment funds. So the big investment funds came in, consolidated the farmlands. In theory, got the benefits of scale in their equipment and their practices, et cetera. One of the consequences of that was that we decimated the small towns across the United States, particularly the notorious flyover states, because they lost all of that infrastructure that was necessary to support the smaller, more decentralized agriculture base. So we ended up with a smaller number of very large investment group-based companies controlling almost all the agriculture, whether it's animal food products or it's grain products, across the United States. And with that, there was this vertical integration all the way up to the food processing industry and what we now call big food, that has, notoriously, when the tobacco industry got its haircut, Philip Morris and others decided to invest in food, and they brought a lot of their same kind of marketing focus, their focus on using scientific methods to manipulate the product that they're selling, and it's asserted to make that product more addictive through things like sugar. And so we end up in this situation where we have highly processed foods that are full of largely petroleum-based additives that are intended to make them more stimulatory to our senses. How else do you say it? Brighter colors in our Fruit Loops, tastier Doritos are notorious for the content that goes into a Dorito, and that's all good for sales. But what you've ended up with through the use of seed oils and a lot of other things is highly addictive, truly highly addictive products that are causing Americans to get obese, among other things. And with obesity comes type 2 diabetes, a variety of chronic diseases, et cetera, because we're no longer really eating healthy foods that are coming from primary sources. We're eating these highly processed, chemically saturated, manipulated products that are designed specifically to tweak our brains through our sensory apparatus, smell, taste, etc., to get us to consume more and more of this and generate more profit. That's kind of where this has all gone. And Sean, I know you travel all the time. I travel way too much. And I'm always struck when I come back into the States from Europe by how obese Americans are. Yeah. And it's really striking. And with that obesity comes chronic disease. And if you're going to take a look at it from a federal perspective, the federal budget, Dr. Oz's position, all of that chronic disease translates into enormous costs.
Right. But that's what I think is so fascinating. If the government knows this, that what we're eating and what we're consuming leads to type 2 diabetes and all of these things are going to cost, not only make us sick and get us, eventually we get chronic diseases, but they cost the government money. So why? I mean, that's what I don't get. The problem to me is that, like, you're smiling, doctor, but that's the thing that's so funny. If a patient walked in and saw you and said, "Doctor, I got this problem with my knee," and you said, "Well, then stop hitting it with a hammer," that would make sense. But we're like walking in, the patient's walking in and hitting his knee with a hammer, and we're going, I just don't know what the problem is. Like, why is the government allowing this to happen?
Well, and so once again, I suspect you're being a little coy there. The answer is DC. The answer is the way our political culture is structured right now, and the fact that these very large corporate interests basically capitalize our electoral system. And that, we can, if we want to get down in the weeds, we can talk about Citizen United and how things have really transformed American politics and align the interests of our leadership, quote unquote, with the interests of these very large industrial concerns, including the hospital system, the pharmaceutical, we talk about pharmaceutical industrial complex, agriculture industrial complex, et cetera. We've kind of all gone to this vertical integration model, and then it's sustained by this strange quirk that a lot of folks aren't really tuned into. If you're big business, regulation is your friend, because you can comply with federal regulations. You can afford to do so, but the smaller competitors can't. And so this is getting back to Joel Salatin, this is one of his main beefs, no pun intended, is that it is so incredibly expensive and cumbersome to be able to sell products direct from farm to consumer. And that has to do with the USDA regulations associated with slaughterhouses. Joel has this great speech that he does in which he talks about what happens with his pigs. He produces pigs locally through a great practice involving sylvan agriculture. He grows them in the forest. They love to eat the acorns, etc. And then he is invested in a local slaughterhouse that he's part owner of, that he has to truck the pigs to. He can't slaughter them on his own farm. So he's got to truck it to this facility that has to comply with all these USDA regulations, including having a special office for the USDA inspector, has to have that inspector there, has to cover those costs. All that stuff is easily handled by the very large slaughterhouses, not so easily handled by the smalls. And then, as if that isn't bad enough, if he wanted to take the waste product, the offal, intestines and other material that's left over after slaughtering his pig, and move it back to his farm and plow it under to enrich the soil, he can only do that if he has a hazardous waste permit and is in full compliance with the hazardous waste laws for transportation in order to bring the parts of his pig back to his farm that he can't sell. So we've created this incremental burden on anybody that's trying to provide any direct-to-consumer marketing for farm products, or he likes to point out for kitchen products. You can't bake a pie, an apple pie, and sell it to your neighbor anymore. You have to have an approved, inspected kitchen. And so we end up in this situation where you have the federal government attacking Amish farmers for selling agriculture products across state lines, because that's, of course, where the federal government comes in, interstate commerce, and enforcing things like with great vigor, things like not allowing people to purchase raw milk because they would get a tuberculosis sort of related bacteria that they thought years ago was associated with TB, but now they know that it isn't. But it's like these things get locked into government regulations, and they become immortalized. They can't be reformed. And you ask the question, well, how come this crazy system exists? It exists because it serves the interests of those that are controlling our food supply. Because they are able to comply with all of this and thrive in it because they've helped to create those laws.
Yeah. I want to pivot to vaccines, because that's obviously something that's your wheelhouse. A lot of attention on this. For the people who have heard the lies of the media say that Bobby Kennedy's anti-vaccine and we're just removing all of these safe vaccines for children in particular, you are a leader. You're appointed to that task force. What is the status of vaccines in our society right now under the current administration?
Okay, so now I'm going to have to give my disclaimer. My comments here represent my own opinions and not those of the U.S. government, the CDC, or the Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices, since I'm a member. So if I don't say that, then occasionally I get spanked by HHS comms. So now I've said it.
There you go. No spank.
What's the status? We learned the other day with the president's press conference, something that it's now public that I had been aware of, and perhaps you are also, that the president has some very strong opinions about vaccines. It's not just Bobby Kennedy. The president also has some strong opinions about Operation Warp Speed, and I think people misconstrue that. Operation Warp Speed, to my thinking, was an example of an amazing success and capability to mount an all-of-government response into what was appeared to be a crisis. I think bona fide, the president believed it was a crisis, and he was able to get the government to respond in a whole of government response in which you had agencies that normally don't play nice in the sandbox with each other cooperating. He broke down the silos, and you're seeing him do the same thing now in a number of other sectors. He clearly has the ability to get the government to get moving when he wants to. And that is what happened with OWS. Now, we can argue about the work product and the data on the safety and effectiveness of the genetic vaccines in particular that were launched during Operation Warp Speed, in part by cutting short a lot of well-established regulatory norms. I don't think that is serving the American people and the global population well right now. That's my opinion. But getting back to ACIP, this advisory committee, what if you step back and look at the big picture, what we have going on right now, and this is part of the tension that's existing within the CDC in general, is a fundamental philosophical conflict between collectivism and the logic of utilitarianism, which is embodied in modern public health, and the rights of the individual, and the old school approach of patient-centric medical practice. And so let me elaborate on that a little bit further. The ethical logic underpinning public health in the 21st century is what's called utilitarian bioethics. And it's taught in academia now. It's swept together with wokeism all across the medical schools. And the thesis underlying that is that we should optimize the greatest happiness for the greatest number. And of course, the devil's in the details. Who gets to define what constitutes happiness? Okay, and then you optimize on those variables using epidemiology and various tools associated with public health to that endpoint. Whereas traditionally medicine has been focused on the patient in front of you, on a one-on-one interaction. You go to the doc listens to you, the doc focuses on you as an individual and what your needs are, and should ideally act as your health coach, wherein you are in the driver's seat. Now, many patients don't like that. Many patients want to be told what to do. And this is part of what leads to the physician who might become a little bit too wrapped up in their own self-importance, is because a lot of times patients are coming to you and treating you as if you're some sort of a deity. Oh, doctor, please solve all my problems. Many other patients approach, particularly in the modern age with the younger people that have access to the internet, approach this interaction as one in which, hey, I've learned all this information, I have these problems that I'm experiencing, these symptoms, I have this chief complaint, and I'm coming to you as an expert to help me think through things here. That is the position that's more aligned with the Hippocratic Oath and with the bioethics of the 20th century that were based in the Nuremberg Code, the Helsinki Agreement, the Belmont Report, the idea that patients have the right to informed consent. And that has two key components. Informed, you have to have access to the information. It has to be presented to you in an open and honest way. And consent, that it's your right to discern whether or not you want to accept a medical procedure, particularly an invasive medical procedure, whether it's a colonoscopy or it's a injection by needle of a mRNA product. You have the right to make a decision about whether or not you want to accept that for you or for your children in the case of a parent, for example. And the public health has been really kind of co-opted by the idea that physicians should be optimizing, and the CDC is very much grounded in this now, that medical practice should optimize for the outcome in the population. And so a lot of things get justified based on this logic of greatest happiness for the greatest number. We need to vaccinate newborn infants because some, for hepatitis B, I'm going to give a specific example that's a hot topic right now in the press. The logic is that we have to vaccinate newborn infants for hepatitis B because they are at risk for hepatitis B. No. They're not at risk for hepatitis B. Okay, they're not at risk for hepatitis B now. Are they at risk for hepatitis B later? Well, if they become prostitutes, IV drug abusers, or if they're the children of recent Southeast Asian immigrants, those are the three groups, okay? And what happened was historically, Sean, you were around. You remember after the Vietnam War closed down, the United States government took a lot of Vietnamese and people from the surrounding region that had been supporting the U.S. government, had played a key role in the South Vietnamese government, had acted as warfighters on our behalf, etc. They were brought into the United States to avoid their being re-educated, etc., by the North Vietnamese. And with them came the endemic hepatitis B that is common in Southeast Asia. And so we had a surge in hepatitis B. But what is being presented again and again in public health is a graph that starts at the peak of that hepatitis B outbreak associated with those folks coming in, and their children, by the way. It's the children of people with hepatitis B that are at highest risk for hepatic failure, liver transplantation, all those kind of things, which of course cost a lot of money. But that decline that happened after that is often attributed, like the decline in polio, that is really based in improvements in sanitation practices, largely, not the vaccine. That decline that happened was really the consequence of washing those people out of the system, getting them treated. But it's attributed to vaccines. And so the logic is we have to vaccinate them at birth and then twice after, shortly, because they don't come back when they're prepubertal teens. It's hard to get them then. And so we got to get them when they're newborn, when we got them captive in the hospital. And a lot of parents object to that, understandably. And there are data suggesting, and this will be examined carefully over the next couple of months before the next ACIP meeting. There are data suggesting that hepatitis B vaccination in the newborn carries significant risks. How significant? To be determined, but you're vaccinating all children at birth and basically bullying parents at a time when they're very vulnerable to accept this product. In many cases, it's kind of grandfathered in when you sign the general waiver and informed consent documents when you want to have your child in the hospital. So they kind of sneak it in there. And then your child is subjected to this vaccine that they don't need. And if they were to need it, they would need it at the soonest as they enter sexual maturity. And even that's tenuous. So when you're administering something to a healthy population that is at no immediate risk of the disease, it darn well better be super, super safe. And that's the kernel here is of the issue, is whether or not those products are as safe and effective as advertised, and is it really necessary to get them when they're newborn to prevent the very modest risk that they might, extremely modest risk, that they might get hepatitis B from the family or the surrounding parents, because any mother that comes into the hospital is tested for hepatitis B pretty much right out of the bat, right out of the box.
I agree. I mean, that the way you describe it, I just don't that it's mind-boggling. Doc, I got 60 seconds left. I want to ask you just, if you can give me a quick summation of this. Earlier in the week, the president had Pfizer in the Oval Office.
Yes.
He had threatened to put massive tariff on drug companies that didn't manufacture drugs in the United States. And Pfizer, it seems, ran to the president and said, I tell you what, we'll drop all of our prices if you stop these tariffs on Pfizer. Generally speaking, do you think that this was a smart tactic that will benefit us, or was this just Big Pharma playing the game?
So you're asking me a political question about the strategy of the president in the current situation. Dr. Oz makes the case that by the end of the president's term, we're going to see major cost reductions in over 90% of all drugs available to the United States, to Americans, and that this is really the first tranche of that. So is the president clueless about his base, or is he playing a sophisticated game of cat and mouse with the large pharmaceutical players? That is above my pay grade, and I think we will find out. I certainly, much has been made of the clip of Bobby Kennedy's facial expressions when he was in that press conference. I don't want to second guess the president, Sean.
Yeah.
That's the truth of it.
Fair.
Is he's playing big stakes poker, and in Borla, I don't think is playing with good faith. I don't. With my 30 years under my belt of dealing with pharma, I really don't have much respect for any of these folks that are within these companies. They're very avaricious. But if the president has managed to get a major concession in pricing, which appears to be the case, then and is likely to be able to leverage that he got with pharma to others within the industry. That's the thing about politics, is you got to give some to get some, and sometimes you got to play with folks that are not particularly savory. And I'm not going to second guess the president and his strategy here. I think time will tell.
Okay, fair enough. Dr. Robert Malone, I appreciate it. Always love our conversations. I've got like 50 more to go, but I know our time is tight. And Bill O'Reilly never likes it when I take over the hour. So thank you for making time for us again. I really appreciate it. Good luck going forward, especially on your vaccine council.
Thank you, Sean.
Appreciate it. All right, guys, thanks for being with us. Again, go to SeanSpicer.com. Make sure you hit that subscription button, because the rant this weekend is epic. Have a great weekend. We'll see you back here on Monday. Well, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get more.